All right, let's get to golf. For boy, the home stretch is starting to come on the PGA Tour, and Jon Rahm is a guy that has been playing fantastic golf this year, leading the way in the FedExCup standings. 4-win regular season, including a victory at the Masters, and he is one of the betting favorites to come away with the title at the Tour Championship Atlanta when it's all said and done. But first things first, it's going to be Memphis, St. Jude. And taking a look at the FedExCup standings, Jon Rahm does have a 174-point lead over Scotty Scheffler. Defending champ Rory McIlroy not far behind. Just a reminder again, when you get to the Tour Championship, the leader gets a 10 under par advantage. The next guy, in this case, Scotty Scheffler, would be 2 shots back, and then it goes from there. By the way, Jon Rahm this week was asked about what he would want to change, maybe perhaps in terms of comfort. And Jenny, he's practical like the rest of us.
I can tell you right now, my priorities are a lot lower than what a lot of people would think. If I go by request, I know this is going to sound very stupid, but as simple as having a freaking porta potty on every hole. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't choose when I have to go to the bathroom, right? You know, I've told the tour this many times, as simple as that. Just simple little things better for the tour.
It's smart.
It's smart, and like I said, it's practical. All right, let's bring in our analysts here, Rick Gehman and Doug Bell. And Doug, I'll just start with you based on where you are right now. What did you make of Jon Rahm's comments, and how did that sort of percolate throughout the area there?
Well, it's interesting, Tommy. As the rain comes down now in Memphis, I don't know if you can hear me, but Jon Rahm and the rest of the guys are going to have a very soft golf course, let me tell you. But for Jon Rahm, I think it's the right attitude. He's a guy who obviously focusing on major championships. He's trying to take a little pressure off. Hasn't played the last few weeks, hasn't played since the Open Championship. Comes in as #1 overall in the strokes gained category. So I guess you have to look at it from our perspective. Good to have a few weeks off leading into the playoffs, or is it better to be a guy who's been playing a lot of golf at the playoffs? I think Jon Rahm is simply trying to get the right frame of mind mentally as he goes after this second season on the PGA Tour. And I will say this, he likes this golf course, tied for 5th here a year ago. And also, Jon Rahm has a spectacular record in the FedExCup Playoffs. So I think right where he wants to be. It gets started tomorrow here. Very soggy and wet.
Yeah, and maybe it's dealing with some connectivity issues there. And again, we're going to try to work on Doug's signal and his audio in just a second. But Rick, I'm going to go back to you first off. Before we get to the Jon Rahm prospects, what about the Jon Rahm comments?
Yeah, first off, if we don't have Porta John branded porta potties at every single tee and green, we are doing something wrong. Let's get this guy a little extra money in the pocket. He's right. Let's increase the comfort. I've found myself in a similar position out on the PGA Tour circuit, but I think that Rahm, you know, for the most part, he's been very open and honest about the pros and cons of the PGA Tour over the last year and a half, right? There was a time where he was speculated to go to live, and he would just kind of fight back and say, listen, I'm just going to do what I think is best for me. I'm going to continue to play the events that I want to play. I want to continue to play in my home country of Spain. I want to continue to play where the best players in the world are, and I'm not that difficult, right? Jon Rahm's got plenty of money. He's not worried about that. He's worried about the locations of porta potties out on golf courses, because that's the only thing that Jon Rahm has to worry about. He's playing great golf, and he is certainly gearing up for a 3-event stretch, which could culminate in a lot of money and a lot of hardware on his shelf.
So I mentioned Jon Rahm being one of the betting favorites. Actually, Scotty Scheffler has had some line movement. He was behind 3-1 last night. All of a sudden now is the betting leader at plus 250. And this is, again, to win the FedExCup Playoffs, not the tournament just this week. Rick, what do you make of the line movement here? And Scotty Scheffler obviously is a contender in this space.
Tommy, this opened up at plus 480, and it immediately got smashed down to 3-1. It's immediately going lower, and I think a lot of people think what I believe is that Scotty Scheffler is going to give himself the best chance to win the FedExCup. You know, this is a very unique thing that we have going on right now. Yes, they are 3 separate tournaments, but they are so closely tied together because your finishing position 1 week with the multiplied FedExCup points is going to improve your position in the following week, and then you essentially have to be within that top 5 when we get to the Tour Championship to realistically have a shot to hoist the FedEx Cup. And Scottie Scheffler is so consistent. We spent all year long tracking how many top 12 finishes in a row that he has had. I think it got up to 19 before he gasped. The horror finished T23 at the Open Championship, right? This guy has been phenomenal with his floor. So when I look at his chances, he seems to be the most likely golfer to finish inside the top 10 every single week and give himself a chance when we get to Eastlake, which is incredibly valuable over these next two events.
Guys, it's interesting. Scottie Scheffler, you wouldn't think he would need any motivation, right? But he finished second in the FedEx Cup a year ago after being number one most of the season, number one through the playoffs, and then number one going to the final day at Eastlake, and then Rory McIlroy passes him by. So I think it's interesting. You have a player of his caliber who now has a chip on his shoulder. He is motivated. Listen, Scottie Scheffler, number one strokes game with the irons in hand, phenomenal. Scoring average, nobody has a better scoring average on the tour than Scottie Scheffler, which is amazing when you consider how poor his putting is, and he still has the best scoring average. So I think Scottie Scheffler comes in, obviously, very confident golfer, and why wouldn't he be? But I do think in the back of his mind, he's thinking, doggone it, I should have won that FedEx Cup last year. I won it this year. I like the motivation factor when you're talking about a player, the caliber of Scottie Scheffler.
Doug, it was good to have you back. So let's sort of combine your pick to win, because it's a conversation, at least for Doug's portion of this, that happens to be the champ Rory McIlroy. Doug, why are you so high on Rory to be able to come away with this right now third on the betting board?
Well, Rory McIlroy is a guy, the only guy, not Tiger, not anybody else who's ever won 3 FedEx Cups. And I think Rory is headed for a potential 4th. For whatever reason, at this stage of his career, and he's 34 years old and obviously a superstar, plays the FedEx Cup event much better than the major championship, although he was okay this year in the major championship. And listen, since he tied for 7th at the championship, Rory McIlroy has a win, a runner-up finish on the PGA Tour, and he has 7 top 10. I mean, he's had a phenomenal record over the last couple of months on the PGA Tour. And he comes in here a year ago in Memphis, he misses the cut, and then goes on to win the FedEx Cup. Again, there's no cut this year, so even though he's been off for a few weeks, and it'll take him a couple of rounds to get settled in, I think Rory McIlroy will be, in 3 weeks, the only 4-time winner of the FedEx Cup. And remember, all the points, guys, starting tomorrow, all the points are quadrupled in the FedEx Cup playoffs.
And Rick, final word from you. Quick thought on Rory, but give me your actual pick following a thought here on McIlroy.
Yeah, Rory's phenomenal. Doug laid out his history at these events, and there's really no reason to think his great tee to green play is going to continue. He's got a new putter in the bag this week, and so does Scottie Scheffler, who is my pick to win the FedEx Cup playoffs. You mentioned how much those odds have dropped, and I think it's for good reason. Scottie is going to debut a spider putter this week, where they've moved the weight closer to the face of the club, so it's going to feel more like his blade putter, but should allow him to align things a little bit more easily. And if he does anything with the flat stick and marries that with the historically great tee to green play that we've seen from him this year, he will run away with this FedEx Cup, and it won't even be close.
That would be scary for the rest of the field. All exceptional golfers. Our thanks to Doug Bell and Rick Gehman here. Remember, the FedEx Cup Playoffs on CBS. There are the big players there, streaming on Paramount Plus. Again, it all starts this week out in Memphis at the St. Jude. All right, let's get back to golf happening this week. FedEx Cup Playoffs starting. The odds to win the St. Jude Championship out at TPC Southwind in Memphis. Scottie Scheffler, the betting favorite to win the FedEx Cup Playoffs. Also the betting favorite to win this tournament at 6-1. John Rahm behind him at plus 850. Tied Rory McIlroy. And then you see the other guys there in the team, Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay at 15 and 16-1, respectively. Back here with Rick Gehman to get his picks for this week and give us some advice on how to bet it. So first off, the pick to win, Rick, where are you headed?
Yeah, hat tip to Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler and John Rahm. Those guys are great, but I'm going further down the board to Sam Burns. And this is somebody that I've been kind of earmarking this golf course for the last couple of weeks, and I was hoping to see good play out of Sam Burns, and that's exactly what I've gotten. TPC Southwind is a golf course that is asking for two big skill sets. Can you hit your approaches close, and can you make those putts? That is a combination of skills that is unique on the PGA Tour. There's not a lot of guys that put both of those two skills together. Sam Burns is one of the best at it, and he's also one of the best Bermuda grass putters that we have in the world. His history around this place is a runner-up finish and a T20 in his last two trips. So Sam Burns has been trending towards this spot for the last couple of weeks, and we know he has the upside to win a golf tournament like he did at the match play earlier this year. I'm very, very excited about his prospects for this.
We'll love 35-1 too, or thereabouts if you can find it. What about best bet? Anywhere on the board, top 10, top 20? What do you got?
Yeah, I will go to the finishing position market here and go with Colin Morikawa, who feels like it's been forever since he's won a golf tournament. I'm not asking him to do that, and the discourse around Morikawa's 2023 season, I think, is pretty wrong. You know, he is still statistically one of the best players that we have in the world. He is the fourth best approach player that we've seen on tour this season. The DNA for Colin Morikawa is exactly the same as it was when he was winning 5 times in his first 2 years on the PGA Tour. It's just been kind of a weird year. He hasn't had a lot of win luck. He had to withdraw because of back spasms before the final round of the Memorial, where he was only 2 shots back. If he goes on and wins that tournament, you know, we're having a completely different conversation around Morikawa. So I like him to finish on the first page of the leaderboard, finish inside the top 10, and kind of keep that momentum rolling as we head towards the final couple events of the season.
Love it. A $10 bet gets you back close to 20, so you almost double your money in that situation. If we go into the DFS market, let's start with the bad buys first, guys that you're fading or want to avoid.
Yeah, we'll start with Brian Harman. You know, fresh off an Open Championship victory, it is usually hard for guys to be able to reset and get focused again. There's a lot of media that you do, there's a lot of celebrating that you do, and there's not a lot of practicing or working on your game that you end up doing. So I'm a little bit worried about Brian Harman and how he's going to be able to get back on track. But Tony Finau is one that I also see some red flags in. You know, he played well at the 3M Open for the first time in 8 or 9 starts, but that's a place he should play well. It's a place he's historically played well, and it's kind of hard to give a golfer a lot of credit for that. So I need to see a little bit more out of Tony Finau, who has struggled with the flat stick. He has not been nearly as good in the ball striking categories in the last 6 months as he was in the previous 6 months. I think there are a lot of concerns that are being masked by the top 10 finish that he had at the 3M Open that are still very much present this week.
Both guys in the 8 to 10K market, so those are the bad buys. What about the good buys?
Yeah, one of my favorites is Emiliano Grillo. You know, historically, he has been one of the worst putters that we have on the PGA Tour, but he's figured something out back in March. Since the Players' Championship, he's the 4th best putter on tour during that span. It's absolute craziness, and the results are following. He won a couple of starts ago. He continues to be one of the better drivers, one of the better approach players that we have on tour, and he's added a brand new skill set to his game, which makes him very, very dangerous. And the other one, maybe the most popular guy on tour right now, it's Ricky Fowler, and his game has been so well-rounded and so complete. This is not a flash in the pan at the U.S. Open. This is not a flash in the pan and get into contention and play well. He has been putting together consistently great results for the better part of 9 months. And this golf course, asking similar questions that it will ask of Sam Burns, be great on approach, be great with the putter. That's right up Ricky Fowler's alley. I think he continues this great season, makes a continued push towards the Ryder Cup team, adds some more money to his pocket, and generally plays well at the FedEx St. Jude Championship.
Great stuff, Rick. Certainly appreciate it as always. Rick, part of the First Cut podcast. Kyle Porter, Greg Ducharme, Mark Immelman, and other slew of hosts and guests. Scan that QR code. By the way, last year's champ was Will Zalatoris. Of course, Zalatoris on the road to recovery. Won't be able to defend that. But it was great last year to see him get over the putting woes. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week in Memphis, and you'll get round-around updates from our guys at the